appreciate. I also do realize that there's some of us who are not in a good position. So that's perfectly fine. But one of the big things that I said at the beginning was, it's always good to kind of put us in this uncomfortable position sometimes when we start learning, because this is how we learn from each other. So as I go through this presentation, my goal is to create a space that we can all talk to each other and be able to share about, what we came to learn and what we're really not sure about. So please feel free to use your emojis, the reaction tabs. If you would like to share something, put the thumbs up and whatever else you need. We'll be keeping an eye on that, because sometimes I get very carried away and forget to do that. Um, and also, let me go ahead and just give you an idea of what I'm going to do. So I'm going to go through what I call a mini lecture. And this mini lecture is pretty much informed by my first experience from last year, when we had when I judged the first case competition. And there were things I was like, oh my goodness, this is brilliant. Oh, here is an opportunity for us to make better. So this is where this is coming from, before anything else. So as we go through this, I also do want to share my contact information in case you're shy and you don't want to raise a question here and you want to send it on email. You can either email Osei or email me directly, and I'll do my best to try and get you an answer or point you to a resource while you're getting onto that. So since we all have some text capability, I am hoping, I would love to see, very briefly, on the text box, and I see we're a really good number here. We're a total of 31 right now. I would love to see from the chat what's the one thing that you're really looking forward to get out of this workshop? Why did you take an hour out of your day to come here? So just give you a minute to put that on the chat. See a lot of wonderful things coming up here. I love this one. Point us to what I must not miss to have a stellar executive brief. Nice. And I see first time competition here. Experience in writing a good summary. Looking forward to get a general overview. This is fantastic. This is fantastic. So one thing I would like to share with you all is, you may think that as a professor who teaches, who runs a program and teaches a class on how to develop case studies, that I will have figured it all. But one thing I'll tell you is that cases are very difficult and very complex to write. But at the same time, there's some very basic elements that go into it. And when you talk about how you write that brief, this is a skill that I think we all continue to look for nice ways within which to look through. So what I'm going to do, and I hope this will help, help those of you who are saying, I want to know how to make sure I don't miss that great prize, that I get to know how to manage my first one. I'm going to go through three things. First of all, give you some of what I consider the most basics in any case development or any case writing or case analysis. And the second one is talk about, how do you really build an effective and compelling case? And then finally, really spend time, and I'll leave lots of time at the end for us to talk about how can you really have a persuasive case. And for those of you who were part of last year's cohort, it would be nice to have you at that point share some of your experiences in terms of your missed opportunity or things that you did that made your case stand out more than anything else. So does that sound like a plan with everyone? Thumbs up, thumbs down. I love that. Okay, excellent. So one of the biggest, the most interesting things in any of the cases is always being able to frame your case properly. One thing we all struggle with, especially when something like case writing is something so new to us, is how much information, how do you create the most compelling story? A case is a small short story that really allows you to think about some phenomena, some social phenomena that you want to address, a real life situation, and how you're going to fix it. But most important, what is the hook, that you're going to put out there? What is it that is so important, and why is it important we address this issue? So how you frame the whole situation is the first thing that you need to think about. So first of all, before you frame that, let's talk about why case methods. So a case method, and you got your case, allows you to really organize and test a lot of your information. And what you have in the current case is a lot of data. And just like any perfectly written case, you have what we call extra pieces of information that you most likely will not need to use. So the challenge is, how can you tease out what is the most important information that supports your strategy, that makes most sense to your strategy? And how do you say the rest of this is noise? When we talk about data and we talk about data analysis, you have all these things that are going on. Some of them are really important, and then the others are just like little icings or little extra crumbs that are on the side that really don't make a big sense. So that's the one thing you really need to be careful about. The second thing that, a case is useful for is that it really, once you've looked at that data, you can really start thinking and identifying what kind of a strategy could you use. And the beauty of cases, especially in the business world, is you have the ability to look out. As you're looking at this case study, the one thing I'll encourage you all to do is not just think about the e-health, how has that grown? Your specific case looks at Ghana. Ask yourselves, as you work as a team, step away from the case and go to the library, get online, do some research and find out, are there other countries that are doing e-health interventions around maternal, and child health? And what are those strategies that they're using? Are those strategies that can be transferred to Ghana? Are they strategies that OKB might be able to adapt? You have an estimated budget of how much OKB is willing to spend. So does the strategy you adapt meet, will that amount of funding be feasible, or is it, something bigger than that? So that's why using a case study is helpful. And finally, think about how you're going to measure this. Coming from a monitoring and evaluation background, the one thing I've always found interesting is people forget about looking at evaluation as a tool that actually helps improve a strategy. I believe very strongly on having a monitoring, evaluation, and learning system, which simply translates to every time you measure, progress, you see how far has this helped move the needle, or what is not succeeding. And then based on that knowledge, you can tweak your strategy better. So your case strategy will need to really offer OKB some of those suggestions, based on what you've seen from your research of other organizations that have done this. What might be some possible scenarios that OKB might be faced with? So this is why thinking about, why a case setting? This is why you really need to think about that. That first of all, it's giving you a very simple, small, bounded area through which you can explore a phenomena or fix a problem. And secondly, it's helping you to narrow down what possible solution you might use. And thirdly, it's helping you to further narrow down what are those possible resources that might be needed for that. So there are 5 key case components that I personally do look for when I'm looking at something like this. So I noticed as you wrote what you came to learn, some of you noted that you're here to learn how to write an executive brief. Others talked about it as, a case brief. Whether you call it a brief, whether you call it a project proposal, all these are differences that are based on our different academic trainings, which is fine, which is great because the judges you have all come from a multidisciplinary background. I myself am a social scientist, but I have a business background as well. So when I look at most of the works, it depends with where, what particular scenario are they looking at? But there are certain things that are pretty much the same across all areas. The first of those things is your problem statement. What is the problem that you're seeking to address? When we talk about a problem statement, we're talking about that core opportunity that your project team is seeking to address, not having you come and read the whole problem back to us. So one thing I noticed last year was a lot of the strategies that were offered were not clear because the problem statement was not clear. Your problem statement has to literally lend to the strategy. Your problem statement provides you the language that you need to define your indicators. So that's why I say your problem statement is key. If it's not strong, if it's not clear, then you're in trouble. The second one is you must have a background. Everything needs a backbone. We all need a backbone, right? In order to be able to sit down and be able to move around and maybe go dancing after we win the money, right? So you've got to have a background of why this is important. The case you have has a lot of background. And as we go through the various phases just now, I'll show you how some of that information is in there. But you have to situate, when you're scenario setting, when you're framing your case, you want to make it as clear as possible for someone who's not read the case you got to be able to come in, sit in your presentation, get the gist of what you're talking about and say, oh, this really makes sense. This is, feasible, or this doesn't make sense. And then the third, this is the heart of it all, the strategy. How are you going to fix this problem? And as you talk about that, and what I love about the case you all got is that you got what I call a cheat sheet. You have a list of things that have to be addressed in there. We want to know what is going to be the proposed strategy. How will it be implemented? What are some of those techniques, and how will it be measured? I wish I got things like that. That is so cool. Like, you already got all of this. You did not need me to come and tell you. But you know what? I'm more than happy to do that because this is really, really important. So when I looked at the case competition and I saw, the step-by-step plans that are required, the timelines, I'm like, you got this. You got this.
We'll just find a room. Come join us. Yeah.
Looks like Soed's network is probably in and out. Then the other thing that is also highlighted in terms of things that are needed is you need to make sure you give a clear breakdown on what are those capital investments that will be needed in terms of human and the investments. You're talking about having a digital intervention. What needs to be put out there? What will need to happen? And then, of course, the evaluation. What are the key metrics? How are we going to know that we're going to succeed? How do we know what success looks like when it comes out there? And again, as you build these components, most important, I put a nice arrow on this slide here for all of you. Make sure that your visual does not cover your information. Did anyone notice that? See the image of I put a picture right over human resource. But you see, the mind usually will trick you to not even have noticed that. But again, what we're saying is your presentation over and over needs to be very clear on what you're doing. So, problem statements. How do you write a good problem statement? What's key? The first thing I always say is you want to define what the challenge, is first and foremost. You want to start narrowing that down until you scope it out and you have a very specific problem. And then you have to have within that problem statement the desired outcome. Because remember, the problem statement guides everything. It guides your strategy, it guides your indicators, it guides the variables that will be used to track success, and also allows us to see how far from the final goal are we. So that's the first and most important thing. So my strategy for writing a successful key research problem is always I write the first bit, continue working, research, see what the other folks who worked around this area, how they have defined their problem, what strategies have they come up with, and then how does your problem differ or complement what they have. Work through and then come back at the end and check your strategy versus the problem statements you got. Does the problem statement translate to the strategy? The evaluation components that you're proposing, things that your problem statement said it would capture. If you don't have these two talking to each other, then you have two completely separate things. So I'm sure when the judges look at your work, the one thing that they'll be focused on is the strategy. But in order for us to be able to judge and clearly understand what that strategy is, you must have identified what the problem and what you're going to address is very, very clearly. So is it lowering the maternal health, mortality rates? Is it by increasing live births? And if it is, by what percent? By when? Is it going to be incrementally, or is it going to be immediate? What kind of a strategy? What are you going to do? So you've got to be very clear on what that would be. When you write your background, again, going back to your scenario setting, you gotta always keep on asking yourself, some of these main questions. I usually say 3 or 5 W's. Who is your strategy going to address? Again, your problem statement needs to make that very clear. What is the problem? Who is this intervention supposed to help? Where is this intervention going to happen? When? Within what time frame? And why is it important? So you need to be really clear and define that population. Within the case setting you have a lot of statistics in terms of the mortality rates, the number of live births. Take away the noise, hone down your solution to a very specific group. Because again, remember, when OKB adapts your strategy and rolls it out, it needs to be able to roll it out to real people, not to, not to something that is virtual or a fictional population. And then there are several things that I love about this case. Again, when I looked at the data sets, I could not help myself but think about what a robust set of data you guys have. So the big question is, as you look at the case, what are some of the, and they ask, what are some of the opportunities and challenges that OKB might have? So I like using several frameworks for environmental scanning because I believe any strong case needs to have a background. So what are the existing policies, within Ghana that have really led to improved live births? And then what are some of the social factors that really make access to health very difficult? Beyond the money, there are some traditional aspects tied to it. And if there are traditional aspects, might that be an area that OKB tries to go into? And then technological, fun one. What kind of technology exists? So again, your problem statement will have some suggestion of what the solution will be. But again, I believe OKB is looking for a digital-based solution. So whatever you're going to propose, there's a technology that you want or you're proposing, OKB adapt. Will that be something that they will be able to have access to? So here's an example. I don't know about all of you, but I work in some places where the internet connectivity can be very, very dicey. You go out and you no longer have access to that. So having something that relies on internet, and I know internet is not going to be accessible, even though I have a cell phone, I can't have a hotspot, then that becomes a problem. So you need to think about the technology you propose. Is that something that's going to be possible to access or not? And then the internal assessment, as you propose this strategy to OKB, you really need to have done your homework. I love the fact that there is a lot of resources online on OKB's website, but I think this is where I say you all need to take advantage of OSEI and reach back to him and do a SWOT analysis. Really understand what is the capacity that OKB Foundation has right now. We talk about having a budget, but we don't know. There's an OKB van. We know that it has some capacity, but again, what will happen if we scale this intervention into that? So think about, the opportunities are there, but what might be some of the threats? What might be some of the weaknesses that the organization might have? And are those things that can be addressed internally? Are they things that they may want to build in some capacity building as they go forward? Or what would that really look like? And then as you continue to do that, at the back of your mind, keep on thinking and asking yourself as you think about the intervention or the strategy you're proposing, how might some of these external factors affect the internal operating factors? So, for example, if Ghana were to change the current internet infrastructure, say maybe there is access to fiber optic in some of the villages where OKB is going, is that going to make this intervention that you're proposing much more accessible and easier to reach than other things? Now, one of the things I've noticed with my students and with your previous cohort that did the case last year was we all love data, and the more brilliant you guys are, the more you just want to showcase all the magic you can do with your data. Keep your data simple and engaging. That is all I have to say. There are many ways to present the information. You can create infographics. At the same time, you can use tables. But whatever you do, you've got to remember to keep it in a way that people can read it and they can clearly understand what you're talking about more than anything else. Again, that data that you present needs to be clearly tied to the strategy. Don't present information or any data points that are not tied to your strategy. A good strategy is always tied to the problem statement and the data and the evaluation. So think about that. What is it that you're proposing in terms of moving forward? What kind of resources are going to be required for that? How would this be implemented? What are some of the tactics that will be used to implement or roll out the strategy you're proposing? Supposing your team comes up with a strategy that does require some marketing, what kind of advertisements do you think, advertising materials could OKB create? And can you come up with a sample of what that maybe flyer or marketing content might look like, and who it would be targeted to, how it would be distributed, and how much it will cost to produce that? And how often does this campaign need to be run? So that's one small, very, very small piece of what the strategy would need to look like. Again, how is OKB going to be able to, based on your proposed strategy, how are they going to be able to measure success? What are the key indicators? There are so many indicators that the case already provides you. As you look through those, and I encourage you, go back and look at the Sustainable Development Goals framework. What do the SDG goals, the global ones, what are the measures, what are the indicators that they use? Are they part of what has been presented in this case? Or do you need to bring some of that in? And if you're going to bring them in, how will OKB be able to use those and measure those? This is something that you need to really make sure you're pulling in and demonstrating the depth within which you looked at the case and your solution is tied to all that. So again, the way you present this data allows us to also be able to see how far from, the goal is OKB on this, and how close are they? And finally, simple things that you should always think about as you put your presentation together. You need to be very clear on what your message is. Many of you said you came here because you want to be able to know how to write a successful case. A case, I consider it like a story, but you got to tell the story in a very simple. That's my version of it. You need to keep it simple. You need to make it clear. You need to have a real purpose. You need to have objectives. You need to be able to show how those objectives will be measured, or what will the outcomes be. So you need to be very clear. And when you have too many colors, too many infographics, text that is too small, that will always take away from everyone else. So think about, how can you tell your story without taking away from you? Because the judges will be looking to hear from you. What is it that you want to tell? And, how do you propose that strategy be implemented? If you're talking about a timeline, then give us a timeline that has very specific tasks, milestones, because we can see where the milestones are, and and give us an idea of what indicator will we be using to assess that milestone. Have we reached there or not? Again, be very careful. I hope you've all noticed by now, the images I've used in this presentation actually came from your case. Be very careful where you get your images from. The last thing you want to do is be guilty of using copyrighted material. This is one thing that I've noticed so many of us don't realize. And again, it's because of either the place where we're at, whereby the policies don't necessarily enforce a lot of the copywriting requirements, but you need to be very, very careful on what material you use, and how, you portray that, and giving credit to that. So these are some of the main big things that I would say you need to think about. So in summary, your problem statement is the golden nugget. You got to define what the problem is. Why is that problem important? What your strategy is intended to do, and what the outcome is going to be. All that should be within your problem statement. The second thing is keep your background information to the point. Only present what makes your strategy shine. Do not, and I beg you, please do not, since I'll be a judge again, come and read everything that the case you were given said. The judges have already read that. We want to know what you know, how you take that information and creatively pull out the most important pieces that, support your brief. And third, what is your proposed strategy? What approach, what intervention are you proposing OKB use to address the problem? And why is that strategy the right strategy? How is that strategy going to help the organization meet its main mission? You had to say at the beginning, OKB's goal is to make healthcare accessible to populations, who are in rural areas and other underserved areas. How does your strategy make this mission possible? How does it contribute to it? what are the challenges that OKB might, face while they try to address that? And what might be some ways that they could mitigate that? And fourth, how they're going to evaluate, how they're going to make sure that they're moving in the right direction. You guys go to class, you get tests, you get grades. That's how you know you're learning, you're progressing, right? But then what about an organization? How are they going to know that they're doing that? Because they cannot rely on opinion polling or surveys. I do not want to see any of you say their success measure is going to be just surveying the people who get surveys. That's one place to get the information, to know that the customer service is there. But I want to see something more than that, because there is something called when you provide someone with a service and they feel good about it, and then you turn around and ask them, can you take this survey and tell me whether this was a useful service for you? Of course they'll say yes, it was, right? So keep it simple and keep it strategic. Remember, your goal is to keep it all out there. One of the things that kills a good presentation is when you move away from the basic, away from what your goal was. So those are the main things that I would say that you would want to do. So with that said, I am going to pause here and see if we have any questions. Because I'd like to open the floor now to questions and discussion.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Dr. Frida. This was very an awesome presentation, very insightful. So thank you so much for sharing that with us. So yeah, we will leave it for people to ask questions. Yeah.
I'm also going to stop sharing this the screen so that now we can see each other, or at least be able to see any reactions we have out there.
I think Andrew has his hand up. So Andrew, please, you can go ahead and ask your question.
Thank you, Jose. And thank you, Dr. Frida, for the presentation. Very helpful and insightful. My one question I have, and apologies if this is in the case and I overlooked it, but how long would we have theoretically to implement the solution? Like, obviously, we don't have like 10 years to build something and implement it 10 years from now, but is there like a time frame, I guess, that minimum or maximum?
Well, say, I know it's 5 years, but since the solution is coming to you, you tell us, is there a minimum? Because that's the other thing.
Yeah, so that's a good question. So for us, we are thinking, yeah, this should be 5 years from because once the solution is developed, we would have to now go on the field and figure out whether it's going to be feasible and stuff. So it's going to take some time. So I think at least we should be up and running, like maybe at least 2 or 3 years from that, after the case after your solution, after we've done a lot of investigation and ready to roll out. So that would be the minimum. And then the maximum will be 5 years, so that we can really see the impact of the work that we're doing. Yeah.
So if I may follow up on Andrew's question to rig this for the wonderful folks who came here. So when they build out their strategy, are you envisioning that they would take into account the pilot phase, whereby year 1 is potentially pilot, and these are the steps that they will be rolling out, and year 2 is this, and 3 is scaling up, and 4, is that what you're thinking? Or
yeah, exactly. I want to see the outline of each year, what they're planning to do each year, and that would help us. So definitely, maybe first year will be, okay, we are doing the background search piloting. Second year is what we want to do this. And I guess it would also depend on the solution that they are presenting as well. Yeah. And also, you guys can also put some questions in the chat if you're not at a place where you can talk. Yeah, I'll be in the chat. This group is very quiet.
I had a group of students from Vietnam last Friday in my class, and one of them told me was, in class we go, the professor talks and no one talks. So why do you push your students to talk? And I said, because when you talk, we learn from each other. So guys, please text, or just turn on your camera, or just ask a question so that we all learn from you.
Okay, so the one question is, please, can we put the background information before the problem statement?
As a rule, I usually say no. You can have a very small introduction that lays the ground for your problem statement, but the background information is a significant chunk of information that really lays the groundwork, that presents the data, that presents everything that, outside the meat that is needed to explain why the strategy you're proposing is needed. So you always want to, in a case situation, you want to make sure that your problem statement sets the stage, not the other way around. You don't bury it in there, because once you start telling someone this story and then you now want to tell them the problem statement, they're already tired. You want to always strategically position yourself, give maybe a couple of sentences to introduce the problem, then state the problem, then turn around and give the background.
Thank you. So another question is, how long should the executive summary be and in what format? So I guess I'll answer this question. So the executive summary should be a one page, and it should be, so regarding the format, I guess we are open to both, but I guess we will recommend the PDF format. So yeah, the executive summary should be a page long. And I think, let me see if I can mute peace. All right, and the other question is, if the strategy requires some information such as availability of internet, which is required before implementing, can you start carrying out surveys as in the first year plans?
I would say kind of a good strategy requires you to do your homework. This is why I said do your homework. Don't throw a strategy from the textbook out. When you're doing your internal and external, especially the external assessment of the environment, that is where you should be able to know what kind of internet capability exists within the area. So let's say, for example, your team decides that they're going to come up with an intervention that is using cell phone, texts, just like Ghana has, the government rolled out something that has an SMS system or a video, text, something that is tied to the technology. What you want to know is, when you look at the map of the region that needs to have the intervention, is there existing coverage within that area? And most of that information should be available publicly online. And if there is none of that, then you potentially don't want to propose that. You want to propose something that does not require that technology at that phase, but maybe the second phase. But make sure when you do that, you really explain why you're going to that area without that, capability. And why? Is it because within the telecommunication system that there is a plan for them to roll out a new cell tower within the area you're going to? And one of the things you're proposing is OKB could partner with them to make this faster or become an incentive for them to put that out there. So again, doing your homework to show us that you really understand the technological landscape that your solution is going into will be very, very important.
I think the other question, so I'd like to ask if our strategy and resource implementation should include the OKB stated budget. Yeah, so that is the budget that you would be working with for the case, yeah.
Yeah, this is some really great questions to get us out. So Sandra, this being your first time in a case competition, do you feel like you've gotten some skills that will help you to work with your team in getting this done?
Yes, I appreciate it. Was a great presentation and I've learned a lot.
Good. What about Evans? Do you feel like you've gotten some pointers on how to make sure you're in the A team this time?
Sure, a lot of pointers.
So what is the one thing that you think will make you a stellar winner this time?
I believe that, as you said in your summary, to keep it simple and engaging, capture their attention and keep it true.
Yeah, I think, yeah, you can go ahead and unmute yourself.
Oh, okay. Can you all hear me?
Yeah.
Oh, perfect. So I just had a question about the presentation. Is that going to be live or is that going to be recorded?
Okay. So this time around we are doing something differently. I think last year it was live, but we had issues. I mean, people connecting and internet connectivity issues. So some of the teams it weren't fair to them because then they had a lot of issues. So this time around it's going to be recorded. So people have the time to record it, and what will happen is that when it's your time, we will play the video, and then your team should be live to answer the questions that the judges have for you. So, I mean, the judges will have the recording ahead of time. And also during the competition, we will play it again, and then they will ask the questions from there.
Also, this is my first case competition, so this is really, really informative. So thank you so much. Just one question. So since this is my first one, what are some mistakes you've seen made by, I don't know, people who this is their first case competition, and what are things that we should work on as a team to be as successful as possible?
Say, last year, the one thing that stood out to me was that there were a lot of great ideas, but people spent too much time providing us the background information we already had and very little time on their strategy. The winning team spent more time talking through their strategy and why it was the strategy to adapt. And that made them really successful. So to me, I would say that has been the one thing that I would love to see change different this year. But Osei could speak to this better than I could.
No, I mean, exactly what you said. A lot of people the team came in telling us the information that we already read in the case. And so you had like 5 minutes to present. So it's like, okay, if you spend 3 minutes telling me about the same thing, I mean, you have only 2 minutes to convince me that your strategy is the right one. So this time around, as Dr. Frida said, we want you to be brief. Definitely, we want to, I mean, at least know that you read the case. So at least let us know the issue that you are sort of addressing. But I would love to spend more time on the strategy because based on your strategy is when the judges would have questions for you.
All right, thank you so much.
Yeah.
The
So
question that Andrew just raised, and this is, and Andrew, thank you so much for bringing this one up too. Your executive summary should be everything, you know, wrapped up in a nice, beautiful red bowl, because I love red. I was hoping to see more laughs about that. But anyway, your executive summary should be able to tell us, you know, something about your problem statement, your strategy, you know, the background, the strategy, your proposed indicators, and, you know, how you will measure that. So that's something that all needs to be wrapped in that. Don't, again, disconnect that. And your problem statement, again, should be very reflective of your executive summary.
Exactly. Yeah, so the executive summary is a way for the judges to, I mean, have a fair idea of what to expect, so that once they come in, they are able to ask the right questions. It doesn't come to them as a surprise. So as Dr. Frida said, it has to be like a very concise version of what you're going to tell us, right? And there's another question from Peace. How many minutes do you have to present? So you have a maximum of 7 minutes. Yeah. So the final recorded, yeah, so the final recorded presentation should be ready for submission for the 21st. The 23rd is the first round. We'll play the video, and I think you wouldn't get any chance to also, I mean, edit your video for the finals if you are selected to be a final. So the video that you are going to send is what is gonna be used also for the final round. Yeah.
I have a question for you. Will the video recordings for all the teams be available for us, not judges, but the participants, so that they can also learn from each other and be able to critique each other?
Yeah, I mean, we haven't thought about that, but I mean, yeah, definitely. So you mean after the what's it called? After the competition?
Yep.
Yeah. Yeah, we will, since we have the access to the recordings, definitely we'll be able to merge it together and sort of use that as a resource. I mean, for next year's case competition, yeah. Mm-hmm. So to follow up the recorded presentation, it means our video should be, yeah, so your video should be a maximum of 7 minutes, because when we are playing, if it's 10 minutes and we are playing your video at 7 minutes, we will cut it off. So if your strategy is in the last 3 minutes, then you lose that. Yeah, so. Okay, so while recording, is it only the presenter or the team members? Yeah, that is a great question. We know that the time is pretty short in 7 minutes. So if all the 4 are supposed to present, I mean, it can be possible for all the 4 to present in the 7 minutes. But definitely if that's not possible, at least a minimum of 2 team members should be able to present, and the other 2 should be ready to answer the question, because we also want to see that all the participants are participating. So it's either they play a role in recording the video or they play a role in answering the questions. So that is it, yeah. And also, I will also to make our slides available in the, yeah, so your slides, yeah, definitely should be available in addition to the recorded video. One being that, I mean, definitely OKB would, as you said, love to implement the solution. So then it would help us have access to that. Also, when citing additional information from a source, is it important to reference that source? Dr. Frida, do you wanna?
Absolutely, and I'm so glad to see this question because I am one big proponent of do not get yourself in trouble with plagiarism. Please put your references on your notes portion of the slide. So you can reference, put the author, the year, and then put the full citation at the bottom on your notes section, please.
Because we are definitely going to also, I mean, when we select your what's it called, your solution, we are going to read and figure out, I mean, figure out your references to make sure that we are also not using the wrong information. So definitely, I mean, it would be good to have it either, as Dr. Frida said, at your notes section or even at the end of your presentation as an appendix, or like, I mean, reference information. We'll definitely love to have the references to it. Yeah. Any questions? I know that we are minutes past the time, so just to be respectful of everyone's time. I don't know if there is any last minute question, any burning question that you'll have Dr. Frida to answer before we bring the meeting to an end. There's Dr. Frida for the images.
Same thing with the images. Again, depending on what it is, if you get a table from, the World Bank site, from, say, the Ministry of Health in Ghana, please make sure you put a reference of that, put it at the bottom as a source, and then within the notes section, make sure you give us the direct hyperlink to where it is. And, that we were able to make sure that you're not plagiarizing. But yes, great question on that one.
Awesome. Okay. Any last minute question? Okay. All right. So, I mean, once again, Dr. Frida, thank you so much. I think someone just put, do we have to provide references in the executive summary? Yeah, so references in the executive summary definitely is not needed because it's a one page, because that would take a lot of pages. But Dr. Frida, I was thinking, I guess for references, they can put it as a second page, but not in the one pager. What are your thoughts on that?
I usually say the executive summary goes before the whole document. Correct. And the end of the document is where you have your references. So unless you're sending out the executive summary as a separate document, you should not have, two of those. Again, the goal of an executive summary is not for you to be representing other people's information. It's for you to be summarized, the information you found in a concise way. We do not look for references within an executive summary.
Thank you so much. And what date should our slides be ready? Definitely by the 21st. Yeah, that is when we need the recorded version. So it should be ready by the 21st. Another question, is anyone supposed to ask questions to others or only the judges? So for the purpose of the case competition and the time constraint, we will leave it for the judges to ask the questions. But I think it's something that we can definitely consider moving forward to allow other groups to ask. And they say, please, how many groups are presenting? Yeah, as I said earlier, we had a total of 106 people registering for the case competition. So definitely have it. So I need to do the math, but probably a minimum of 25 teams if 4 is in each group. So a minimum of 25 teams And also, since we are strict with our deadlines, as of now, I can't tell you the final group numbers that would be presenting, because if teams don't submit their executive summary on time, they will be eliminated from the competition. So there would be things that team need to meet. If they don't meet that, they will be eliminated. So I can't really tell you the final group yet until after the 19th or the 21st. That is when we will have the final group, because if you don't meet the deadlines, they will be eliminated from the competition. So yeah, I think we'll pick a last question from Samuel, and then I will bring the meeting to a close. So Samuel, please, you can unmute yourself.
All right. Thank you very much. Yes, please. So I wanted to ask, with the executive summary and then the final PowerPoint slides for the presentation, the information on my executive summary, can I bring, let's say, a different or additional information on the main slides for the presentation, or what you wrote in your executive summary is exactly what you're supposed to expatiate in your main slides? So that, let's say, you see some information in my main slides and then it wasn't in my executive summary. Is there going to be a problem? I don't know if you get my question.
Yeah, I do get your question. Dr. Frida, do you wanna chime in, or I should go ahead?
So that really short and to the point. Your executive summary is a summary of all the information in your entire presentation. If it's not there, it should not be in your executive summary.
Yeah, so
Does that
I think
help?
this question was more like, if I submit my executive summary and maybe I do more research and figure out something, can I add it to my main presentation?
Exactly.
Oh, no,
exactly.
no. Oh,
exactly.
It means you didn't do your homework before you did that. So one of the best practices, of being a good scholar is you present, a summary that really captures the essence of what you're trying to do. So your executive summary is supposed to be pitching an idea of what you think the solution will be. But as you pitch that idea, you must think about, what are the key steps that will be needed. An executive summary will not have every single nitty-gritty step, in the timeline, but it will give the broad vision, and that's what we're looking for. Does that help? And I'm sorry I misunderstood your question at first, Samuel.
It's fine. I get it now. Thank you.
Yeah. So basically, for the executive summary, we are looking for the broad idea of what you are going to present. So that means there will be some information that you would present in your final, the nitty-gritty information you present in your presentation that you wouldn't include in the executive summary. But the executive summary, the goal is that we have a broad idea of what you are going to present, but maybe the timeline and everything that you have to do would be included in your presentation. And so, yeah, I'll answer the last question and we'll bring the meeting to a close. When do we submit the executive summary? Say the date of the presentation. So executive summary would be due, I think, on the 19th. So that is when the executive summary is due, and the main presentation is due on the 21st. Yeah, so with that being said, definitely I think the email that we sent a couple of weeks or days ago, I have some time that I'll be holding information sections so that you can come in, ask me any questions regarding, I guess, the foundation, the case study. If anything is unclear, I'll be around. I think we have a couple of dates, I think, starting tomorrow. So, I mean, you can also utilize the opportunity to ask me any questions that you want to ask me. But yeah, thank you again, Dr. Frida, for your time. Really, really appreciate it. And to all the other participants, please, you can ask me questions via email or come to the info sessions, and then I will answer any questions that you may need. So thank you all so much, and have a wonderful rest of your day.
Thank you. Bye.
Bye.
And good luck to all of you.
Bye.